On this week's episode of Hockey Inside Out, it is the 1-year anniversary of Marc Bergevin being fired. We get the panel's thoughts on the effort that Jeff Gordon has provided so far as the Executive Vice President of Hockey Ops, and what grade would they give to Jeff Gordon and Ken Hughes in their administration roles. We recap the loss to the San Jose Sharks. Are they surprised that it was Jake Allen Nets than Sam Montembeault and Albert Xhekaj given the healthy scratch? And finally, we'll get the panel's thoughts on Mike Matheson and what he's brought to the ice so far for the Montreal Canadiens, plus the bonus questions on this week's episode of Hockey Inside Out. And welcome into a new episode of Hockey Inside Out. I'm your host, Mo Khan, alongside Andrew Berkshire and Rick Green, and Jack Todd filling in for Stu Callan, who's on his way to Western Canada for the Montreal Canadiens road trip. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Let's dive into it. It's the 1-year anniversary of Marc Bergevin being let go by the Habs last year. Jeff Gordon's taken over. It's been 1 year for him. Gents, what would you give Jeff Gordon's effort so far, plus the administration of Ken Hughes and Gordon of what they've done as a tandem so far?
Well, I give them the absolute highest marks you can give. It would be A+ down the line. But every time I say something to that effect, whether it's in a column or on Twitter, 20 guys pile on me and say, you can't say that. You know, they haven't done anything yet. Well, no, it's been a year. Like, whoa. The first thing that occurred to me when I saw the question was that we have to say Bergevin was a better GM than most people give him credit for being. The best part of the nucleus of this, the young nucleus, are all Bergevin's picks or trades. He did a good job. Something happened, I think, toward the end. I agree with Pierre Gervais' assessment that he was too emotional. We saw a guy who went from being like the merry prankster kind of a Guy Lapointe type to this long-haired, red-suited madman who was smooching his players on the ice and seemed to lose it a bit. And then with the Mailloux draft, which I think is why they were fired ultimately, it wasn't the draft itself, the pick itself. It was the fact that they were blindsided by the reaction. Like, what tunnel do you live in that you wouldn't know that in 2021 or 2022, the spit was going to hit the fan? And it did, and they just were not prepared at all, at any level, not at the PR level, not at any level. I think that had a lot to do with his exit. That said, I think they got absolutely the right guy in Gordon. It would be nice if he was bilingual. The hiring of Kent Hughes pretty well diffuses that situation. And it's too big a job for one guy these days. I think we can all agree on that. You know, the days when Sarah Savard could do it while playing poker with Carol Vadnais, that's all in the past. This is a big corporate operation now, and Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon together are brilliant. They're brilliant men individually. I put a high premium on intelligence ever since the Habs had Nathan Beaulieu and Alex Galchenyuk sharing a brain for the evening. Brains matter, and these guys have it, and they're thorough. I love the transparency of this organization now. And one of the things that struck me most was when Hughes was talking about the process of acquiring Mike Matheson. And one of the things he said was that he had, and we have to remember, he knew Matheson since he was a kid. He had been his agent. They had all kinds of multiple relationships. He still called Chris Letang to talk to him about Matheson. This is how thorough their approach is, how patient it is. And it's paid off. It's paid off in huge dividends. Like Kirby Dach, I think, is going to end up being the biggest of them. But this is what they are. They're smart, they're thorough, and they're doing a great job.
Yeah, highest grades possible. A year removed from being left, let's be real here, a terrible situation. Yes, Marc Bergevin finally had a couple of good players poke through 10 years of atrocious development, the worst in the entire NHL in terms of translating picks to NHL players. No other team is even close to the disastrous record that the Canadiens had under Marc Bergevin. So you've got Cole Caulfield and Caden Gooley showing up at the end of his tenure, really taking their strides in the NHL after Marc Bergevin is gone. As good as Cole Caulfield was in the playoff run, he really took a step after Ducharme and Bergevin were gone last year. So you've got that, sure, but then you've got tons of big contracts for multiple years stuck on the books that this new management now has to deal with and try to find value in moving them out of town. It's a difficult job. So being able to take over this team and already add so many future assets in such a short time is really, really incredible. The returns they've got on trades are gargantuan. You know, the fact is the Canadiens right now are 1 point shy of the Florida Panthers, whose pick they own in the draft this year. Like, there's a legitimate chance, as good as the Florida Panthers are, that they could miss the playoffs this year and the Canadiens could have 2 top-end picks in the upcoming draft where there are incredible players available. That's nuts, considering the trade was for Ben Sherratt, who is a net negative value player in the NHL and has been his entire career. Those kinds of patient moves and taking advantage of GM's biases are really impressive. And Kirby Dach, obviously, a huge, huge move there that has solidified the first line, going from just being able to score to now being able to score and play defensively and control the puck in the offensive zone for longer stretches. I'm really impressed with what Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton have done. And I'm a very critical person in terms of management decisions. So I try to find things like, what's the misstep? Where are the errors? And so far, I don't think that they've made any egregious errors. You know, time will tell. But even the things that I disagree with, I can see the logic behind what they're trying to do. And I think that it has a lot of foresight, which is something that Marc Bergevin never had with the Montreal Canadiens. There was never any plan, long-term or short-term, with Marc Bergevin. He talked about a 5-year plan when he first came in, had no idea how good that team actually was, consistently underrated Price, Subban, Pacioretty while they were in their primes, and then tried to go for it at the end of it when guys were too old to last, and he got one miracle cup run because Shea Weber and Carey Price basically ended their own careers to push them through. And that's just not a way to win in the modern NHL. And I think that the Canadiens and Canadiens fans should be extremely happy with where the organization is trending right now.
And I really believe, it's fair to say, to this date, that these guys have complemented each other in such a positive way. I know when Jeff Gorton took the job over, he said, listen, I've got to work in tandem with my GM. I have to have trust, and I have to have a good working relationship so that we can pull together and make some really good decisions as a group to find the best, players that we can that's going to fit the mold of the Montreal Canadiens. And, you also have to give, full credit for the moves that he made in bringing in a new scouting staff. And he brought in Gordie Clark, for an example, a guy that has been around a while and has been critical in, trying to project some, underevaluated players that they think they could get a stab at and bring them in the organization. And, they really needed that in that department, and they've kind of overhauled, amateur, pro, and a number of positions to allow them to seek out and find good guys that are going to fit into the Montreal Canadiens plan. So this is an area I think that's been critical and been missing that they didn't have before, and we're starting to see the results of some pretty smart, experienced guys that seem to know what it takes to bring in the type of people that they like to bring in. And let's not forget, bringing in Martin St. Louis, an energy guy that has nothing but positivity in, every aspect of his on and off ice stuff that is, being grabbed a hold of by each and every one of those guys in the dressing room. And it's showing in their desire to try and get better each and every day. And there's nothing more that you can ask for than guys buying in the plan and really trying to make a difference and become better players and, a better team overall.
And let's not forget, Rick, bringing in the alumni again to allow these players who are young to speak with and be around players like yourself who have been there before, who've experienced the Montreal market, who've experienced the ups and downs that happen in Montreal. Those players were iced out, especially in the latter years of Marc Bergevin's tenure. Now they're welcomed back in it's a big change and a positive change.
Yeah, without question, Andrew. I mean, I said that to somebody the other day. All of a sudden, the switch went on to say, you know what, these guys are welcome to come around. And I think, generally speaking, most of the current players, when we do go around and we do bump into them, and we say hi to them, and we can kind of relate in similar ways that it's a long season. You're going to deal with a lot of different ups and downs. But the bottom line is keep focus, keep things in perspective. A couple pointers here and there that we experience and seem to work pretty well with us as a group, and it's just really nice that they've opened the door for us and allowed us to be around and share some of our stories and really feel part of the Montreal Canadiens organization again, that we were kind of put aside from the other regime.
Gentlemen, when you look at this regime right now, are we still in the honeymoon phase with Jeff Gordon, Ken Hughes, and even Martin St. Louis, or are fans going to want to see results at some point in the next year or two from now?
I haven't seen any sign that this honeymoon is about to crack, which is surprising in itself. This town is hysterical. I lived through the famous season when they lost 8 games, and I remember they lost 2 in a row. Half the team was sick. And they lost in St. Louis. They lost in Atlanta. Oh, my God, it was fire. Bowman, Trey Dryden. These guys are crap. They can't play, I was fairly new here then. I thought, what is wrong with you people? So you can't win in Montreal, but they're winning. And they're doing it. I think probably 90% of the fan base is on board with the patient approach. We can't do it all at once. And their key word to me, which Andrew touched on, but it's the big difference with the Bergevin regime, is sustainability. Everything they do is aimed at trying to sustain this quality going forward. And I think most of the fans understand that.
Yeah, the plan is visible, right? And, you mentioned transparency earlier, Jack. Not just transparency with the media, but transparency with the fans directly in terms of this is what we're trying to accomplish. You can see by the trades that they've made what the plan is, right? You look at all the trades they made last year around the deadline, right? It was always a pick and a player who's like 2021. And you can see them building that prospect base so that they can have players break in around the same time. And not all of them are going to make it, but they're bolstering that group so that they have a bigger group, more shots at some of those guys squeaking through and being quality NHLers. And they're really focused on development. And you can see that both in the way they play in the NHL, in the American Hockey League. Kent Hughes talking about how there's a plan, a through line from the NHL, AHL, Junior, Swedish Hockey League, whatever. Everyone is focused on having the same message across the board to improve players, cater to their strengths, and all that stuff was missing in the last regime. You can see the roster construction, what they're trying to get towards, right? They want 3 scoring lines, is obvious, which is great. That's the modern NHL. You want 5 forwards on the power play. That's, what the NHL is trending towards. It's all visible for fans to see so they can understand, maybe we got to lose now for a stretch to be better for 10 years.
I think they're really consistent in their comments saying, listen, this isn't a short-term type fix that we're looking at, a flash in the pan, if you will. We're looking at building a group of guys that are going to be around a while, and we're going to get younger, we're going to get faster, we're going to put in the ingredients that we think is going to help this roster have success in the long term. So, what we're going to see and what we've seen to date is we're going to have some up and downs. We're going to have some guys in and out. We're going to have some positive and some negative, but the plan is the same. They're looking at the future, and they're building towards that to get better. Every time they get a chance to make themselves better.
Well, for the Montreal Canadiens, they're smelling like roses with this regime, but they're also a contradiction of a team and their chaos that they had against San Jose Sharks, losing 4-0. Guys, how surprised were you that Samuel Montembeault did not get the start? It was Jake Allen, and that Arber Xhekaj was a healthy scratch against a very feisty Sharks team that we saw on Tuesday night.
Not that surprised. Montembeault will be getting more games going forward, obviously getting 2 games in a row is a big change based on how things have gone so far this season, but I don't think they want Jake Allen to sit for a long time either. I think they want him to work out his kinks, and we have to remember that the goal this season isn't necessarily to win every game, it's to be competitive, right? And play hard, but they would still like to get one of those top end draft picks, right? And for Xhekaj, again, like I know he brings a lot to the table that people enjoy, and I enjoy it. His physicality is really fun to watch, and I think that he has really underrated offensive capabilities as well. But defensively, he has remained very messy, and he has a lot of things that he needs to work on. I think in terms of the regular, like the young kids on this roster, he's like the lower end guy. I would say that Kovacevic and Harris are significantly better, and obviously Gouli is in another realm entirely. So it makes sense that he's a scratch once in a while. It makes sense that Harris sits out once in a while, that Kovacevic sits out once in a while. There's a rotation. I don't know if they're necessarily picking teams for him to go into and be super physical, because the other thing is I don't think you necessarily want Xhekaj to continue to fight every game or feel like he needs to be the crazy physical presence every game. He just needs to play his game and settle into the NHL. He doesn't need to go out there and prove himself all the time. I think I mentioned on the show a couple weeks ago, he needs to chat with Larry Robinson about picking spots. And, yes, be intimidating for sure, but you don't have to show everybody how intimidating you are every game. You get your reputation, and then you let it ride a little.
And I'm not surprised Jake Allen went in. I mean, Ryan St. Louis has said he's the number one goalie, if you will. And it's all about managing games, managing, through scheduling and trying to keep these guys the best they can be. And that's a tough job with the schedule, the way the schedule goes. But anyways, the bottom line here is they're fortunate to have a couple of goalies that can step in and do the job. Now it's just a matter of trying to place them in the right situations to get them at their very best. And as far as the rotation of the defense goes, I mean we've seen this earlier in the year. Xhekaj, he hasn't been as good as what he was maybe early on, which is typical growing pains. But you've got to go with this type of rotation where you got guys that they can't sit out too long, and they have to get involved in order for them to figure out how to play at the NHL level. And this is probably going to continue to work this way. And I think one thing remains the same is this communication and information that's given to these guys is one of, listen, this is our plan on how we're handling you guys. Work with us on that, on the way that we want to do it. It's going to work out in the long run. And, the main point being is these guys have to develop. They can't develop by sitting too long. So you're going to get rotation of guys in and out of the lineup, which, is going to work out for them.
You got to keep everybody active and involved for sure. I don't think there's any question right now. This year, Montembeault's been the better of the two goalies, but you have to have both guys going to remain competitive. The one thing I don't see touched on very much is going forward when you're trying to build a real contender. I think the hardest piece to find is going to be the goaltender. Carey prices don't grow on trees. They don't appear at the top of the draft that often. People don't trade them that often. I'm thinking a 2 or 3 years ahead here probably, but it's definitely an area to keep an eye on.
Well, Jess, they have Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, and Seattle coming up in this 4-game road trip out west. How many games does Montembeault play, and does Xhekaj factor in at some point during this road trip out west?
I think Xhekaj will definitely get back in.
Yeah. They'll put Montembeault. I think he'll probably start 2 of the 3 Canadian games. It always gets a little crazy out there. I even remember Price getting shelled in Vancouver. You don't want to expose anybody too much, and I'm sure that defense rotation will continue. It's an odd situation in the West right now because you have 3 teams that on paper were supposed to be pretty good. None of them are as good as they were supposed to be, and you don't quite know what you're facing going in there. But I'm sure that everybody will get a crack.
Yeah, I think, I don't think they're going to have a choice. The unfortunate part, I think, to a certain degree, is those teams out west. They just love to play the Canadians, and they make things really, really tough on them. So, they're going to have to play it by ear, so to speak, to see, how to handle each one of those guys in the net. And Montembeault is capable of maybe a little larger workload, and Jake Allen, obviously, you don't want to burn him down and out, but there'll be lots of conversation on the best way to handle moving forward, and especially on the next stretch of games where they have so many games in a short period of time. They got to make sure they're rested and sharp, and I'm sure they're going to do their best to find the right recipe.
Yeah, one of the advantages that the Canadiens have is they're not really expected to be doing this well, so they can afford to move guys around and lose some games as long as they continue to play with fire, which frankly we didn't really see in the last game against San Jose. I know they controlled the puck most of the game, but 10 minutes in the power play with essentially one scoring chance, a 5-minute or a 1 minute 5-on-3 with 0 shots. There just wasn't much effort to be there, to be seen in that game. So as long as they don't play like that throughout this road trip, it doesn't really matter how many wins and losses they have. I think people will still be happy, continue to see the young players excel. That's really what is the focus of this season, and they do have that advantage. So, you get Sam Montembeault more starts. That's good. Get Jake Allen enough starts that he can get his game back. That's also good. At least get Jake Allen through the first 3 minutes of a game without letting in a goal. That's the number one priority for his next start.
It feels like the Habs always allow a goal within the first 45 seconds of a game when Jake Allen's in the nets. We'll find out what they do this week when they do go to Western Canada and, of course, to Seattle to wrap up that West Coast trip of theirs. We'll see. Will our that guy factor in? Will Jake Allen be the workload horse that we'll have? Who knows? Only Martin St. Louis knows that answers to these questions. We'll find out this week. Mike Matheson, he's had more of a role now, back from injury with the Montreal Canadiens. Gentlemen, what are your takeaways from Mike Matheson's performance so far as a Hab, Rick?
Well, I think it was a great move by Ken Hughes bringing him in. He's such an important part of the defensive core. I mean, here's a guy that logs most of the minutes, almost 25 minutes per game. And let's not forget that there's a lot of youth back there. And watching a guy like Matheson play helps these young guys realize the details of the game and what they need to bring each and every night. And what impressed me the most is I didn't really follow him that much, but what a great skater he is. He is so mobile, and he's not afraid to grab a hold of that puck and exit the zone, and even jump in there to help out on the rush. So he's got all the tools. He plays in all kinds of critical situations. So he is a very, very valuable part of the team. And, we have to really recognize the fact that he's helping a lot of guys on the blue line learn the game. And I just am very pleased to see that a Montreal native has come in and really, really enjoyed the fact that he has a chance to become a Montreal Canadien and be part of the history of this special franchise.
I saw one of my colleagues on the French side yesterday mentioned that this might be the first time in decades that the Canadiens have had a top pairing of two Quebecois defensemen, and I was pleased for two reasons. First, that he included Matheson, because we don't always get included as Quebecois, even the people who were born here, if they're Anglo. But also just that he recognized that fact. He's a beautiful skater. I love watching him in that way. He had a couple of bumps maybe when he first came back, which I think is to be expected when you've missed a lot of time in a game as fast as this one is. And they don't have a whole lot of players in that category. He'll be 29 in February, which means he's in his absolute prime. It seems like everybody else is either on the decline or they're young players where their best is 3, 4, 5 years ahead of them. So to have a guy like that, of that quality around, very steady, I think steady emotionally, very intelligent. He fits with that whole scheme that the organization is plugged into. beautiful pickup from my perspective.
Yeah, he had some bumps in his first couple games there where he made some mental mistakes. There was one play where he just kind of forgot to go get the puck on a dump in from the other side of the ice from the opponent, and they beat out a very clear icing and ended up with like a minute straight of ozone possession time. But other than that, like if you look at things from a wide angle, Matheson has been a revelation for him in terms of controlling the puck. The first pairing has gone from getting caved in to completely dominating play. He leads the Canadiens by essentially every category in terms of controlling shots, shot attempts, scoring chances, high danger scoring chances. While he's on the ice, the puck's on the other end of the rink. The only problem for Mike Matheson so far is he is literally the unluckiest player in the NHL at 5-on-5. His on-ice shooting percentage is just 4%. League average is closer to 8.5. And his on-ice save percentage so far this season is just 81%, which is unbelievable in a league where the league average save percentage at 5-on-5 is like 915. So he's been getting the rough ride in terms of actual goals, but I hope everyone appreciates what he's actually doing out there because the results don't speak to what he's actually been able to do. The one issue that I find with Mike Matheson overall, though, is on the power play. I like the 5-forward power play more than I like Mike Matheson back there on the first wave. I think he could be a great second wave option, but the players defer too much to him to control the power play, and I think it worked a little bit better when it was Nick Suzuki calling the shots and Kirby Dach up high controlling play than it does with Mike Matheson so far.
Rick, from your perspective from Mike Matheson, which of the young defensemen will benefit most with his presence in the locker room mentoring these young guys?
Well, we talk about Jack Eye, you talk about Harris, and, we mentioned the word steady, and this is a huge part of the makeup of a really good NHL defenseman where each and every night what you're going to get from your guys. Not too many mistakes, good decisions with the puck, not giving the puck away, not making a lot of hope plays, not playing high risk. And he's a perfect teacher for, helping these guys realize, like I mentioned before, about details. And it's nothing but positive stuff for the young guys to see this guy. He's really well liked and respected, and he seems like a kind of guy that will do anything he can to help move these guys forward to become good, solid NHL defensemen. So it's a win-win situation with a guy like that in the dressing room, both on and off the ice.
Jack, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's the guy that you just had to have there. The sort of missing link almost to bring things together the way you want to see it in the future. I just there's almost nothing about the way this group is coming together that I don't like, except some of the holdovers which we mentioned before from the previous regime. But they're clicking in the right direction.
Yeah, I think Caden Gooley's going to learn a lot from Mike Matheson because he's playing the role that Gooley was before, right? So you can look at a guy who is an all-tools player in Matheson and try to see what you can add to your game and look at him in certain situations and the calmness with which he approaches the game. And like sometimes he's a little bit too calm, right? He's a little bit too run and gun, but that's okay, especially for a team like this. He's kind of the ideal defenseman that you want your young guys to emulate in terms of pushing the play forward. And I think that's just a lot of fun. I think as things regress for Matheson through this season and he starts getting, less punished for every tiny mistake he makes and the offensive plays that he makes start coming to fruition, we're going to have a lot of fun watching him.
Well, for Mike Matheson, we'll see what he does. I mean, again, he's a player that they brought in to help stabilize the back end, and so far, through 5-6 games, he's done a solid job for the Montreal Canadiens. That'll do it for us here on this week's episode of Hockey Inside Out. Submit your questions and comments and let us know what you think, and we'll talk about one of your questions down the road. And don't forget to go like and subscribe our YouTube page on Hockey Inside Out and sign up for the newsletter on MontrealGazette.com/newsletters. And full episodes and for bonus content, head on by Hockey Inside Out. On behalf of Jack Todd, Rick Green, and Andrew Berkshire, Wish you a great week. We'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.